Good day, everyone. So we'll only give it 2 more minutes for everyone else to join in, to give us a chance for everyone to join in, and then we'll get started. But don't worry, we're not tricking anyone into a training today. In fact, this will be more of a talk show discussion where I'll be picking my special guest's brain on a very important topic that is close to both our hearts, which is digitalization. So we'll talk about how digitalization impacts decision-making and profitability, and in the process, present to you a Veeder-Root solution that is at the core of this subject. Before we kick off, I would like to encourage you to type in your questions at any point in the chat box on the right side of the screen. We'll make sure to answer all the questions in the Q&A segment towards the end of the webinar. Now it's time to introduce our special guest, Sean McQuaid. Sean is the marketing director for GVR Middle East and Africa and has been with the company since 2001. Hello, Sean. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks you, Adam.
Well, I have to say, I'm very excited for the opportunity to have this broadcast with you. Welcome to this webinar series.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the interesting insights that we have with you and our audience today.
Today, we cover a very relevant and interesting topic, I would say, and I'm really looking forward as well to the insights we gain from this discussion, hopefully sharing a portion of your vast knowledge and experience with our audience here today. So let's jump right in.
Sure. This topic is also very dear to myself as well, and I believe the future of success of our customers' businesses depends on innovation like this.
Digitalization in today's era is something we all need to be aware of. It is changing the way businesses operate and is tremendously improving the speed and efficiency at which we can conclude business transactions at. So what's your view on this, Sean?
I agree 100% with that statement, Adam. It's really the reason why GVR has started developing platforms like dataFLEX360. We need to be able to leverage the power of information, and the amount of information that we're generating in today's era is just too much for any single person to try and work through. So platforms like this really need to be developed to harness that power of that information.
So what is dataFLEX360?
The dataFLEX360 is a platform that allows Veeder-Root to collect data from many devices and sources of data and bring this information together into a single platform for our customers to use. This data is then matched and related to each other. So it creates relevant insights about our customers' operations and equipment. These insights and data points are then used by our customers to manage their accounts and to drive improved efficiencies into their operation. The business model that was depicted on the left-hand side here, this pyramid, is a operations model that we put together really to illustrate the way it works. As you can see at the bottom, we've got many sources of data, and that's typically all the pieces of all the devices out there, whether it be sensors, whether it be tank gauges, whether it be transaction recording, ATG, all the devices that generate information get passed up to the next level. And at that next level, we also importing data from other systems. You know, a lot of our customers have already got tracking systems that are generating bits of information. Some of our customers use production systems that generate bits of information. But and a lot of our customers have also got different OEM systems that generate information about their equipment. And what DataFlex does is it takes all that data and it puts it together and combines it into one view. And then at the top of the business model, you can see with all these bits of information that get generated, it gets distilled into a couple of critical reports and dashboards for our customers to use. It must be noted that the data that we use is not just generated from Veeder-Root equipment, but generated from other systems and production systems that are recording tons and recording trips of a vehicle. We like to call this a single pane of glass.
Why do you call it a single pane of glass?
We call it a single pane of glass because we see the various data points from the various systems on a single screen, right? So really on one single screen, we can go and see all the information that we need to make better decisions about our equipment and our operations. And we like to ensure that our customers can view their data on any device, anywhere, and at any time.
I have to say, I really like this business model. It's very intuitive, Sean.
Yeah, it is, Adam, and I think intuition aside, I think the core of dataFLEX360 is its reconciliation ability. And this is central to the core foundation of the platform. After all, the one most important rule of any platform is if your data does not reconcile, then any reports and charts that you're looking at in that system are not really going to make sense, or you're not sure if they're making sense at all. So it's very important that those reports and charts are reconciled.
That is absolutely correct, Sean. Tell me about reconciliation from the DataFlex 360 perspective. What does this mean?
I'm glad you asked about reconciliation in terms of dataFlex 360 because we take a very solid view to reconciliation, and we link our reconciliation to industry standards. So we're not setting the benchmark or setting our own benchmark. We're setting the benchmark against industry standards where legislation says, your variances between meter readings, there's a tolerance of 0.5%, and that's the SLA that we set within our system, is to industry standard or governing body standards, SLAs. And the reconciliation is really the task of matching any recorded fuel transactions that we have on our systems to either product movement through a trade meter called a meter reconciliation. On some of our customer sites, we have a trade meter, a single meter that records a volume, or where product movement goes through a tank farm, and we call that a tank reconciliation. So dataFlex 360 enables both of those reconciliations to take place. And it's the most important task that needs to be done daily. We like to say daily, at least once a day. And once that's done, we are sure that the rest of the information that we're presenting to the customer is as accurate as possible and can be traced to either to a specific vehicle or a specific cost center for efficiency and cost reporting.
Thank you, Sean. So I've spotted two different types of reconciliations from what you mentioned there. We have meter reconciliation, we have tank reconciliation. Can you expand a little bit on the difference between those two elements?
Sure, let me do that. So I think meter reconciliation, as I covered it very basically and just previously, meter reconciliation is matching of transactions that get recorded at the dispensing points of your fueling operations back to a single trade meter that might exist on a site. Not all customers have these trade meters, so not all customers will be able to perform a meter reconciliation on their site. In large operations, this is the best practice, so that you can record variances by dispensing point, and you can understand where the product is flowing out of each tank farm. A tank reconciliation is the reconciliation of the transactions that are recorded at the dispensing points against movement through a tank farm. So essentially, the tank farm has a tank leveling system. You get an open reading, open tank level, stock level. You add to that any deliveries that have been received for the period that you're reconciling. And you subtract from that any transactions that have been recorded by the system out there. That gives you a theoretical stock on hand, and then you compare that to the actual stock on hand that you have through the recording on the ATG system. And that gives you what's called the tank variance percentage. And above ground tank variance percentages, the industry standard acceptable is within 1%, and it's slightly higher than the 0.5% on meter variances because of temperature compensation and temperature effects on above ground tanks, and how that affects the volume of tank product in the tank. The ATG solutions that manufactured by GVR can supply the product level, the water levels, the temperature of a product, and the density of a product. And with these readings, we can see how much fuel is in the tank, and if if there's any water in the tank. And as we know, water is very bad for engines, and we like to track that, and we make sure that the water levels are not too high. Some people might say, well, what's water doing in a fuel tank? And you need to understand that water in a fuel tank is not uncommon. You do experience water in fuel tanks, and it can enter a fuel tank either through contaminated deliveries, or a leak in the fuel tank, or just even the tank sweating. When the tank heats up and cools down, that condensation, sometimes the water that happens in there will release and will drop to the bottom of the tank. So we record that and we track that, and if a water level gets too high, we notify our customers, and they can then drain that water off the bottom of the tank, because water is heavier than fuel and sinks to the bottom. The density measurement on our probes also records the density of the product in your tank, and the lower density will mean that potentially the product in the tank has been adulterated with some other product. The most sort of common experience that we find is that people put paraffin in a diesel tank, and that dilutes the density of the product. And you can pick up quickly if your product is not of the correct density, and do a test on the tank to make sure that there's no contamination if in the tank, and isolate that tank and remediate it as soon as possible. I mentioned earlier temperature, and one thing we need to be aware of, temperatures, it can, on above ground tanks, can easily account for around 2% variance in a 24-hour cycle. So many of our customers that are doing tank variances get scared off when they see a 2% tank variance once they've done a tank variance on an above ground tank. And we say, if it's been done, or your tank readings are done, or your deliveries have been received in the middle of the day, it's quite easy or quite conceivable that you have a 2% variance on just the expansion and contraction of product in that tank due to temperature. So it's not a major issue on that side.
Thanks, Sean. That was quite extensive. And when it comes to automatic tank gauging, so it's not only about fuel levels, right? It's also about other variables that you mentioned, such as water presence. And I believe with water presence, I'd like to add also from my experience that sometimes it's not only water, but it's what we call sludge, which is a mixture between water and the impurities that either come with the fuel or are due to residues in the tank and rust particles and things like that. So I think that is also part of what the system detects, right? So whether it's water, whether it's a mixture of sludge, that would be detected by the system as well, right, Sean?
Absolutely correct.
All right, and another very good point about monitoring the density of the fuel, that gives a good indication of mixing. And the last point, which I found very interesting, is about temperature, and especially in the commercial and industrial space where there are more above ground tanks than underground tanks. I think that temperature variance becomes very key. So especially given the fact that above ground tanks are more affected by temperature, obviously than underground tanks.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
So once reconciled, the customer is assured that all the data is recorded, and they can now use the system for operational decisions. So how does this work for the procurement team?
So the procurement team are very interested in ensuring that there's sufficient stock holding of fuel across the organization or across the operations, and the sites that they look after. One of the biggest no-nos is letting a site run dry, because if you let a site run dry, production or productivity or transportation or whatever activity you're busy with on your site will come to a standstill. And that has got significant consequences. That's got immediate stock or revenue consequences, and it's something which is really something can be avoided. What many of our customers forget is that there's also a lead time on fuel and a lead time on getting that product into the tank. So you need to make sure that you set up your delivery levels with enough leeway in the tank to allow for the product to be ordered through the depot, loaded at the depot, planned, and arrive at your site and be offloaded. Sometimes that cycle can take up to 4 or 5 days, depending where your site is, and you need to make sure that you're catering for that lead time in your replenishment cycles that you put in place. So traditionally, tank ordering by procurement required a team of people running around the sites, taking manual dips with wooden dipsticks in all the tanks, and then getting these readings back to procurement, who would then try and make a good estimate as to what's required or what's not required. And really, that was not an accurate science. So each tank needed to be opened and dipped regardless of the weather and the health risk to the person. And with automated tank gauging systems, this is done electronically. And not only is it done electronically, it's done every hour, right? So you're getting tank dips every hour around your entire network. Those tank dips are typically taking place at exactly the same time. So you're getting a snapshot of your fuel stock levels across your entire organization at the same time. And you can quickly see what tanks need product and what tanks don't need product, which sites are running low. And on top of that, you can set up delivery needed alarms on the probe. So you don't need to wait for the tank level to dip. When that product crosses that threshold and the float crosses that threshold, you can set up alarm that particular site needs a delivery. That alarm will go out and it will be presented on the screen here. You can see quite quickly there's an alarm bell that flashes for the tank, and the procurement people can place orders and get the orders in for that. So very beneficial for the procurement people to use this, because it's a centralized, easy to read and easy to use and really easy to understand dashboard. And it can be configured to do a lot of things automatically through alarms, and the procurement team can now place optimal orders for their fuel with whichever oil company that they procure through. As an added benefit to that, we've mentioned the water levels that we display and the product density that we display. I think we need to make sure that in today's increasingly demanding engines, Euro Spec 4, Euro Spec 5 engines that are coming out, that diesel quality or fuel quality is becoming a big driver for a lot of our customers' operations. And we need to start focusing on ensuring that the specification of diesel is of the right. To eliminate OEM warranty claim refusals or rejections, which can become a costly issue if the OEM picks up that the product or the fuel that you're using is not of the correct specification and denies any engine failures due to fuel issues. So I think from this single screen here, we can pick up a number of those issues. It's not just around procurement; it's also around quality of product and fuel as well.
And I'm sure, Sean, that this also has when it comes to things like the ability to get an overfill alarm at an operational level before the tank would reach its maximum capacity. So when a delivery is going on, so that the person operating the delivery would know that they need to shut down the delivery enabled. And I believe that would take us to the next slide, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, with the advancements of technologies that we're seeing nowadays, just the digitalization of the delivery process at a site has become increasingly improved. We can automate the delivery control now down to a point where overfill should be a thing of the past. With technologies that we've got at the moment, the ATG can be linked to our EMR4 electronic meter register, and if the overfill alarm or point is being reached on a tank, it should automatically trigger, or it will automatically trigger, can automatically trigger an output alarm, which will then trigger the stop button on the EMR4, which will close the actuator valve that is sitting on the inlet or receiving line of the fuel delivery. And that's obviously in a fully automated receiving situation where you've got an EMR4 electronic meter register sitting on a flow meter. You've got an electronic actuator which you can control through electronic pulses, and you've got an ATG sitting in the tank. With that, you can prevent that overflow from happening by switching off the actuator and closing that line before any overspill has actually taken place. And that's got massive consequences on reducing health and safety and environmental issues at your site. Delivery control also, the other side of delivery control, it relates to ensuring that every single drop of fuel that we ordered has been received. And there's two ways to do delivery control. You've got either the single totalizer way, where you put a flow meter on the tank on the inlet line, and we run that in a 24-hour cycle. That just records how much fuel has gone through in a 24-hour cycle, and we then take that and compare it to any bill of ladings that come through from the oil companies, and you create you use that in the tank reconciliation to do a tank recon and make sure that the product has been received correctly. This totalizer movement is just once every 24 hours, and it doesn't give you temperature compensation. It just gives you a movement of what the product was at the ambient temperature that was there. The second method is to do the fully advanced delivery method that you got for larger operations, where you put an EMR4 with an actuator valve and and an ATG. And essentially what you can do is you create a delivery ticket. The oil company delivering needs to press a start button to start the delivery. We can monitor certain variables like overflow during that process. And when the transaction is finished, the oil company presses a stop button. That creates a delivery ticket. And it's important to note it creates a temperature compensated delivery ticket as well. So it'll give you ambient volume that has gone through, or ambient delivery. It also gives you temperature compensated volume, so that you are aware of the exact volume that you've received, adjusting for the temperature that is present at that fuel temperature that's present at the time of going past the EMR4 on the average of that delivery over the period. And that really, I think, is probably the best way to manage deliveries. And you ensured that the product that you are paying for has been received through your flow meter.
This is really smart, Sean, and this then ensures that our customers only pay for what they are physically receiving, especially given the fact that there's a financial stake in our customers' relationship with their fuel supplier. So this level of control on delivery, I believe, is a big added value. And before we move on, Sean, I'd like to remind our audience that you can always type in your questions in the chat box to the right side of the screen.
So just another trend that we are seeing, and we're seeing this through the territories that we operate in Africa and moving up into the Middle East, is around fuel quality. And in a lot of the operations that we're seeing, our customers are spending more and more capital upfront on deploying systems or solutions on the inlet line. So they want to make sure that the product quality that they're getting is also of good standard quality. They don't want adulterated product. They don't want product that's been mixed with water. They don't want dirty product that might come from substandard transportation practices that have been deployed across those vehicles. And they certainly don't want to be paying for water or anything like that. So many of our customers are receiving product into a single larger facility and then dispersing the product themselves to their smaller facilities across their sites. And they're spending the funds on really controlling the product coming in to that single point in the organization. What do I mean by spending money? Firstly, they're putting, before the flow meter, So whatever happens is not being recorded yet by the flow meter. A water coalescer, so something that takes the water out of the product. So immediately, if there has been water that has been mixed into that load, that water is removed from that load before that product is received. They then put an inline fuel quality measurement system, which will automatically record the ISO quality levels of that product, and that records quickly whether there's particulate in that product that shouldn't be there. And then you put in a density flow meter as well, or a density meter as well in line, which will record the density of that product before it has gone into the tank and sort of contaminates your tank. It is done, everything is done before the flow meter. So essentially what our customers are doing now, they're checking for water, particulate and density automatically linked to these delivery control systems that will shut down the delivery if it sees too much contamination, or if the density is wrong, and the water gets removed from it. So you're only getting pure product going through the flow meter, and you're paying for quality product, and you ensure that the product that's going into your tank is quality as well.
The solution is sure comprehensive about wet stock management, Sean, and I believe that would lead us to the next aspect, which is dispensing and reporting components of dataFLEX360, right? And when we talk about dispensing control, there are all these different components in the device layers at site level, such as dispensers, vehicle identification components, as well as the EMR4s and ATGs that we discussed earlier. And all of these need to be interfaced with a site controller that can address all their different protocols and become a single point, or a node, if you will, for all this equipment to talk to dataFLEX360 at the cloud level. So what kind of site controllers does GVR support on dataFLEX360?
Sure. I mean, at this stage, we support all the OPEC produced controllers, so the ORIC controllers, and then we've got our own controllers that are developed in South Africa. So the Enhance and Enhance 1 controllers that are produced here in South Africa and have been produced fit for purpose for specifically the mining sector. The Enhance 1 controllers are a new family of controllers that has been brought in to provide more cost-effective solutions for smaller operations, and let's put it, less harsh operations. So where you've got a cleaner refueling facility, we can put these technologies down that don't need to be as robust as let's say the harshest of the mining environments that we see out there. So Enhance 1 is really positioned at providing some cost-effective solutions for our customers. And then we have just recently interfaced into a controller set out of India. So those controllers also communicate with our dataFLEX360. And as we see a requirement, we can interface with controllers. The most important fact is that we do an assessment of any controller that we interface to, and that controller has got to pass the standard for data integrity. That's the most important aspect of the controller, is that it can record and make sure that no transaction volumes or transactions are missing from the data that we are recording. There's got to be fail-safe methods to ensure handling of a power outage during a refueling process. There must be an ability to rebuild a transaction total from totalizer readings every sort of second or every second, so that these transactions don't get lost through the power and the power management that we see in Africa. Power is a very real issue for us, and all the systems that we do see need to make sure that they cater for that to remain stable and accurate in our environment. So we have reviewed a couple of other controllers, and they cannot provide that level of stability. So we've settled on the ones that we've got at the moment, and we must make sure that we add value to our customers by bringing in clean data for our customers.
Thanks, Sean. So what type of data does dataFLEX360 gather and store?
So when it comes to dispensing, you've got to remember that the transaction is the second half of the reconciliation process that we do within dataFLEX360. So if the transaction is corrupt or missing data, then we've also got challenges and issues in reconciling the platform to make sure that it's accurate. So really, we need certain bits of information that allow us to validate that the transactions are not missing. So transaction ID example should be sequential and there shouldn't be missing transaction IDs. Open totalizer, closed totalizer, which is your readings coming either from a mechanical pump or an electronic pump, should be sequential and shouldn't be missing any gaps between transactions, so that you can do that check as you're importing transactions into your system. So those are quite important. We need a location ID so that we can identify where it's coming from. Date and time is critical. Obviously, date and time at location or point of refueling, because we do have customers that have got refueling activities across multiple time zones. So it's date and time at point of refueling, not at cloud, where the cloud sits. And then if the customer is looking for efficiency reporting and driving, obviously odometer readings, meter readings are recorded. We can store the attendant ID and the driver ID to add additional data to that transaction. If a customer is looking for the next level controls to say which vehicle, which attendant, and which driver was involved in that refueling process, we can facilitate that with a three-stage authorization process on our controllers. So that's the kind of data that we record, and we then take the liters and we then provide that data into the system. We also have a rule engine, so the rule engine that drives behind all our controllers, which allows us to check certain rules to allow or deny certain refueling events. So rules that are such as days of the week, time of the day, or volume limits per day, per week, per month, number of fills per day, per vehicle, all that contribute to a better management process around dispensing, and eliminate the potential abuse of fuel in this environment. If you've got a certain limit that a jerry can, as an example, we understand that jerry cans need to be used because you're filling up small equipment around an operation like lawnmowers and that. But jerry cans are also very portable and are often used in the abuse of the fuel systems that are out there. So limit your jerry can to 20 liters a day or 10 liters a day. You know that's going to be used in the small plant that is there, and the next day they need that volume again for operations. So you're just limiting the refueling process and controlling it up front and making sure that your controls and a better management process around dispensing has been put in place.
Thanks, John. That was very comprehensive, and we spoke of the data and the configurations that are possible. So let me ask you this: what devices now can be used to perform a transaction?
Yeah, I think GVR over the last 2 years has taken a look back at what we offer to our customer base. And we've identified that technologies have really moved on, and new technologies have been introduced into the market space that provide good enough controls for our customers. So we traditionally have always settled on the RFID technology that we've had operating in South Africa since 1999. The RFID technology that we've got still offers probably the strongest USP out of all the technologies, and USP being unique selling point, in that it is the only technology available in the marketplace globally that ensures the nozzle has gone into the tank to refuel. There are no other technologies that make sure that your nozzle has gone into the tank to refuel. So we see a requirement for that. A lot of our customers say that is the technology that they want. So we've got that RFID technology. And then, other customers are saying, look, if you can prove that my vehicle was at the refueling point and, that the driver was there and I know which driver was involved, then I'm happy to use other technologies, and other technologies that we've introduced and we're seeing our customers prefer are the technologies like NFC stickers and communication, where a sticker is affixed to a windscreen of a vehicle. We've got a outdoor payment device or handheld terminal, which taps that sticker, it identifies the vehicle. We then get a driver card or tag, which identifies the driver, and then the attendant tags the pump, and can input the odometer reading, or if the customer opts for our electronic odometer reading system, they can get that electronic odometer or our meter reading added to the transaction in the back office. So the other technologies that have come in are things like MyFair tags, which have been there traditionally in your low-cost entry. We've introduced them into our systems. NFC stickers, or even magstripe cards. I mean, magstripe cards are there. We don't like the use of magstripe cards. We prefer NFC stickers because they get affixed to the windscreen. So at least it gives you an extra level of, hey, that vehicle had to be on the forecourt. Whereas a magstripe card, it can be anywhere. That can travel separately to the vehicle, and that causes a control issue in the refueling process. Adam, are you there?
Thanks, Sean. Before we move away from this section, we've covered a lot of the different components that feed into Dataflex, and I just wanted to note that some of our industries, it's quite common the use of what we call a mobile bowser, right? Which is basically a tank truck fitted with a pump and a hose that would receive fuel from the main tank farm and distribute it across a site to things like static equipment that cannot move and go to the dispensers for things like generator tanks, or even moving vehicles, heavy moving vehicles that cannot leave their operating zone. So what can we do for that aspect to include that in the entire picture of the wet stock that we covered?
So we GVR through Dataflex has got roughly about 2 billion liters of product under management annually, through our platform, and we are seeing close to 30 to 40% of that volume being dispensed through mobile browser applications. So our technologies that we have got, all technologies that we've got available for fixed site, we can make available for tanker truck applications as well. Obviously, the main difference being the power conversion that we do to the unit. So instead of 220 volt, we've got a 20 volt DC power unit, which powers up the unit. And we add in additional controls and sort of spark protection. One of the biggest challenges on mobile browsers is often their batteries go flat, and then those units are jump started, and that jump start causes a big issue for any electronics which is attached to that vehicle. So we've got to make sure we got surge suppression and spark suppression built into our units to prevent that from happening. And power on and power off is managed quite nicely through ignition on and ignition off in a mobile browser environment. So yes, very our technologies that are available for fixed sites, available for mobile browser applications, and in the current space that we see here in our markets, it's to fill up your equipment that's not really available to come back to a fixed site or is further out. In emerging or in busy markets, I mean, in the UAE as an example, or in India as an example, we are seeing that mobile buses are becoming the preferred choice of filling up vehicles just from a convenience perspective, because instead of the customers coming to the service stations, and in those kind of environments, those service stations are extremely busy and customers queue for a long time. In the UAE, there's a service which has started where you phone and book a refueling event with a company. They arrive with a mobile buzzer and refuel your vehicle in the parking lot and continue off and bill you for your transaction. So those kind of technologies are becoming more commonplace, more accepted, and we're definitely seeing the normalization of using mobile buzzers as an option to refuel assets across the territories that we operate.
Thanks, John. So Dataflex is set to be a fuel and fleet management platform, and we have spoken a lot about the fuel component of it. So perhaps explain to us the fleet management component.
Sure. So I think that the main theme that we've got around fleet management is the sort of the extra management around the equipment that we activate on our system. There's so many aspects of fleet management which we don't include in here, which is sort of roadmap development for us as a platform. But at this stage, we're looking at the stuff which our customers are asking us for right now. And the first thing we've got is accurate kilometer readings and accurate hour meter readings for our units. The debate around accurate odometers and accurate hours has been ongoing for many years. And I've got some white papers that have been open since 1972 debating this issue. The issue still hasn't come to conclusion, because if a trucking operator changes their gear ratios on their truck, they change the fuel consumption of the vehicle, the odometer reading on the dashboard. And who's right? Is it the GPS kilometer, or is it the vehicle kilometer? What we are seeing is that more and more vehicles are moving to GPS odometers for dashboard readings. And our technologies that we've developed are also using GPS readings for getting odometer readings, and then adding those odometers to the transaction or hours. Our device also has a vibration sensor, so we can tell when the vehicle is in operation. So we've got idling hours and operating hours, and we can also record when that vehicle started, a trip started, and a trip ended. So the device that we've got is called the AccuTrip Plus, and the AccuTrip Plus basically allows us to record the start date, time, location, and the end date, time, location of every trip that the vehicle makes. And we can create breadcrumb trails through where that vehicle is operated, and we record on breadcrumbs certain data about that vehicle, like where they are, the location, date, time, heading speed, ignition status, etc. These trip logs are easily used to then perform fleet management. Trip logs. What was the vehicle used for? Recording of that kind of transaction. And then within the equipment page of our vehicles, we also track the metrics relating to that vehicle generated by AccuTrip. So you can see at the back here the liters per hour or liters per kilometer type graphs, which really highlight the vehicle's operations and their fuel take on at the same time. And tracking a vehicle's attachments and components, stuff that you put onto a vehicle, added stuff we can add onto here. And then roadmap stuff. At the moment, what we've done is we've attached a new IoT sensor to the AccuTrip Plus for reading independent reading of tank levels on a truck. It uses an ultrasonic level sensor, non-obtrusive, so you don't need to drill holes in your petrol tank. You simply affix it to the bottom of your petrol tank, and it can give you a reading every minute off of that truck or unit that you stick your AccuTrip to. And that gives you the ability to record product levels in your tank at the same time, recording all this other data for the vehicle and sending it off the vehicle into a central central database. Nice for the car park that we deal with in Africa, because a lot of the car park we deal with still don't have electronic systems, and these kind of platforms allow us to convert them onto electronic platforms. Next devices that we're moving on to is tire pressure monitoring, and what it has there, because that also has a significant impact on fuel consumption and cost and operational cost for our customers.
Absolutely. And speaking of ULS, Sean, is there a maximum tank size or the thickness of the steel of the around the tank that it can support?
So it can read up to 5 millimeters of steel, right? So anything less than 5 millimeters, you can read the level of the product, and the up to 2 meters in height. So if we look at long range trucks that travel through Africa, they typically got 3 tanks installed on them. They've got the two 400-liter tanks at the bottom on the side between the tires, between the axles, and they got the sort of 3,000-liter tank on the back window. That's 1.8 meters in height, and the other tanks are 600 millimeters in height. All 3 of those tanks we can read and send that data through to the cloud quite easily. Any of those kind of tanks that are fitted to vehicles.
Thanks, Sean. So we are nearing the end of the presentation. And before we move on, I'd just like to remind our audience about questions. And there's a Q&A. There's a tab for Q&A box rather than the chat box. I apologize for that. Thank you. So, Sean, please explain what integrated dashboards are.
So, yeah, many people think that this is a buzzword. It's really not a buzzword. It's the ability to take data from whatever source of the system, whichever part of the system you want to, and put that dashboard or that piece of information onto your dashboard. So it's the ability to create your own dashboard with data from either stock levels or procurement levels or fleet or cost allocations, or whatever you want to do, and put it into a single dashboard, which gives you, the user, the best view of what you need to see in your organization. So can you create a single dashboard that gives you all the data that you need from all the different aspects of fuel and fleet management that you need? If you can do that, then you've got an integrated dashboard. If you can't do that, you've still stuck on old modular dashboards, where you've got a dashboard for fuel management, a dashboard for fleet management, and a dashboard for whatever management you want to do, load management, trip management. And I think that's really what an integrated dashboard does, is it allows the end user to change their experience on the system. And I think I'm going to go into a bit of demonstration, and I think that kind of functionality is best illustrated in terms of what we mean by integrated dashboards.
Well, Sean, since I work in training, live demos that give the real feel of any solutions are my bread and butter. Please go for it. So I can still see the presentation, Sean. Not sure if you've moved onto the actual platform.
Yeah. Can you see my platform now?
There it is.
So this is dataFLEX360, and really what it is, as I said to you, it's a system that allows you to view your data through dashboards. Obviously, the dashboards that I was saying to you earlier, it comes with a whole dashboard module, which we've got here. This dashboard I happen to save as my favorite dashboard. So when I log on to any of the customers that I've got the ability to view on, I see this dashboard as my home dashboard that's here. And let me just run through some of the constructs of the dashboard. We have the concept of what's called a widget, and each of these blocks of data that you see here are what's called a widget. And you've got the ability to add and remove any widgets that you want on a dashboard, and you can then go manage that widget and set the widget up to do certain things. As an example, on the widgets with the tank levels, you can go and configure that to say, what level must the tank be in green, yellow, and red, and what levels do I get alarms at? And you can go set those up on your dashboards that are here. On other dashboards, you can set runtime parameters like how many hours or minutes do I need between communications to change my dashboards up. What is the level or the water level that's required to change it from green to red? And as you can see here, you can set all that up in this environment. And if I click on Edit Dashboard, and I just go show the available widgets, when it comes to equipment, we've got all these widgets available. So Equipment Master Data Scorecard tells you how accurate or how well maintained the master data is. How many vehicles don't have consumption readings or benchmark consumption readings? How many vehicles don't have tank capacities? Your consumption performance. How's your vehicle consuming performing against the OEM standard that you got there? That's in a chart. This is in a grid. Tank levels, equipment tank levels, equipment exceptions, any exceptions being tank capacities exceeded, multiple overfills. It's available on one widget, and you can add that by simply clicking on the bottom. And if you go and have a look now, should have added it. Equipment exceptions down at the bottom. These are the equipment exceptions that it's added, and I can go basically look at them and drill down into the data. The other thing that we've said around integrated dashboards is that from graphical display through to source data, we want our customers to have no more than 3 clicks. So they must, within 3 clicks, get from the graphical display down to the source data that allows them to do their investigation. So here you can see tank capacity exceeded details. We saw it on a chart. It showed you a chart. You click on the details. It actually takes you to the instances where you see that. And yeah, you can see the tank capacities and the volume that was taken on. And then you can physically go and have a look at the vehicle by clicking on that, and it opens up your vehicle tab, and you can go and modify your vehicle or do corrective actions that you need to on that specific vehicle. So really intuitive around the way it manages the data that you get there. Again, you've got various headings of stock. You've got wet stock widgets. If you go to wet stock, you've got various widgets like 12-month usage, available stock inventory details. You've got geozones, wet stock reconciliation reports, wet stock status reports. So these are the like wet stock status are these ones at the top here. Inlet communications, issue meters, all that. And then your authorizer and controller communications, etc. And then some telematic status as well that we've got on this. So with these widgets, you can then go drag and drop from any aspect of the system onto one dashboard, and that creates what we call an integrated dashboard. Does it make sense, Adam?
That makes a lot of
So, I mean, in terms of the system, we've got 4 minutes left. I don't know if we want to go into the details of the system. Maybe we take some questions and answer those questions. And if anybody wants to see anything specific, we can do that. Adam?
Hello, Sean. Very sorry, Sean. Very sorry, audience. Seems I had a bit of a technical problem. Is
Sorry
it
about
all
that.
okay now?
Yeah, I can
All
hear
right.
you.
So I'm a bit conscious of the time. So thank you so much, Sean, for the informative session. I believe we can go through the questions now.
Sure.
All right. So let me take it from the top. So we've had a question: who is in charge of the fleet control and rules, and can the client change these?
So there are certain sets of rules. We've got what we call global rules, and those global rules are there to protect and ensure our customers' refueling process is protected. It's like velocity checks between fill-ups, like the time that you're allowed between multiple fills. Those a customer cannot change. The rules like where the vehicle refuels, how many times a day it refuels, what days of the week, what are the volume and value limits of the refueling. Customers can set that themselves, yes.
Yes. So on the menu on the left there, when you were showing the demo, Sean, there's a part about equipment management, right, where you can set up the rules for the vehicles and group them and make sets of rules and so on, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the next question, does Dataflex integrate with other OEM products?
So yes, we do. We've integrated Dataflex with Caterpillar, with Komatsu, uh, with Bell, and we've also integrated with Teletrack Navman as a tracking system. And as long as our customers have got an API or a tracking system's got an API, we can interface with them quite easily and pull relevant data in. We don't want to obviously create the full geo zones and driver management reports that a tracking system can give, but we can integrate kilometer readings from a tracking system. We can integrate, trip logs. We can look at locations of vehicles, and we can just enrich the data that we use and provide on our side.
Thanks, Sean. So next question, how does density flow meter, density monitoring controlling the decantation flow? How does contaminated product being stopped from decantation? Is it deployed in any region? Please explain entire architecture and each component in this ecosystem. Is the EMR4 being controlled by FCC? So I believe we can give an insight on that as well, Sean.
So yeah, I mean the density meter and the ISO meter is obviously reading into the controller, and then the controller will obviously stop the EMR4 if it picks up a issue around it, because the controller can start and stop the EMR4 transaction electronically. So the integration is done to the Enhance 1, and the Enhance 1 then monitors the inputs and then can stop the EMR.
All right. By the way, I can see a hand raised in the audience. So if you could please type in the question in the Q&A tab if you select Q&A tab at the top, you'll get the screen on the right and you can post your questions there because unfortunately the audio is muted. So next question is Dataflex a single platform to manage both the fuel and the fleet? And I believe, Zach, that we'll probably already answered that, right? But maybe, Sean, you could shed some light on the fact that it can manage fuel and fleet, but if you want advanced fleet functionality, you could also integrate with other more advanced fleet management platforms such as Teletrack Navman, right?
Correct. Certainly the roadmap that we've got for dataFLEX360 is to migrate into the most used fleet functions that we've got. Tire management, we're looking at certainly tire management, some warranty sort of logbooks. We want to be able to capture maintenance, or let's call it maintenance and accident expenses against us, so we can get a total cost of ownership for our customers. And really, I think we would definitely be driving, down that single path where we're providing integrated fuel and fleet in its entirety.
Thanks, Sean. Next question. On the mobile browser, is this a measure of the dispensing meter or the product tank? If meter, how often is the meter calibration to be done? How do you check for the roads that are rough enough to throw things around?
The mobile browser, the transaction runs through a flow meter, and that flow meter is calibrated. And yeah, if you want to keep your flow meters calibrated or accurate, we suggest every 6 months on a mobile browser, you have a calibrated meter that you can plug onto it, and you run through these meters. Our operations teams on mines have this fitting where we've got a calibrated meter that runs next to a browser meter, and they run it through and they calibrate the meters themselves with the calibration screws that are there. So it's not a costly exercise. It can be done quite quickly to get a good accurate view of your meters and keep them in line. Because it's not for trade, so you can do your own calibrations on those meters.
Thanks, Sean. We only have a couple more questions left. I'm aware that we're past the time, but if you don't mind staying for a couple more minutes to answer those questions.
Sure.
Thanks. So the next question is, how much of fleet management is done and how much of fuel aspect is integrated with the fleet side? Sean spoke about the equipment's stable enough that the power problems associated with Africa is taken into consideration. Does power on-off fluctuation, power down for a while, and bad internet taken into consideration?
So certainly, the lessons we've learned around power and power management have been in the African context. So your power down, obviously power down. We all our controllers do a gracious cutoff. In other words, we don't switch off immediately. There's UPSs built into the devices, and if we sense the power's off, we send a command to stop the transaction immediately. The transaction is concluded, and then the controller records that transaction and performs a controlled shutdown. When the power comes on, we automatically sense that the power comes on automatically, resets the state and continues with that. We don't continue the transaction, but they restart a new transaction and continue refueling.
Thanks, Sean. And about the part of the question about bad internet, I think if you remember the demo, the widget that shows you the communication with all the different devices is there, so you can easily chase after any communication issues centrally from the platform, right?
When I talk about communication, my mind always wanders to the mine operation or gold mine that we've got running in the middle of the Amazon jungle in Suriname, which is Dutch Guyana. And they really are. They're in the middle of the Amazon jungle there, and the big forests around them. And communications there is probably worse than anywhere that I've seen. So, our systems, we've got various comms options. We can the controllers each got their own database, so they store transactions, thousands of transactions at a time. It's not limited in terms of what we store, but we can also then in low comms environments, we set up Wi-Fi points across the mine or across the operation. And when that mobile browser comes in connectivity with the Wi-Fi points, we start sending the data off. And we don't do batch communication, which is key in these sort of low communications environments. We do transaction communication. So we send a transaction, get confirmation, tick that transaction off. Instead of saying, hey, we've got 200 transactions to send here, and we try and send a big batch, which might fail, and then we have to start again. Next time we start, we've got 300 transactions. The batch just gets bigger and bigger. We send transaction by transaction, and we manage it through that. As we get the chance, we send as many transactions as possible off to integrate it.
Thanks, Sean. That's, I believe, a very thorough answer to the question. The next and last question that we have is, does dataFLEX360 contain protocols outside the controller, i.e. for pumps or ATG?
Protocols outside of controller, yes. So in Enhance 1, those protocols are written into and Enhance, the controllers are all written into the protocols are in the controller. In Enhance 1, we're using the TR1000, which is the OPAC payment device with their controllers for pump control. And we're just talking to the TR1000.
Thanks, Sean. Just make sure there are no questions that I missed. I think these are all the questions that we've received today. So again, thank you so much, Sean, for this very informative session. I really hope that our audience enjoyed it as much as I did. And now, dear audience, before closing, in case you are visiting the Electra Mining exhibition taking place in Johannesburg in South Africa, make sure to drop by our booth. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Sean. Bye.